When I asked my friends some of the words they would use to describe our generation, they mentioned ambition, optimism, memes, and as well as tech-focused and STEM careers. Especially when looking at Silicon Valley, there was always a mention towards the pressure to pick a STEM career. After all, Silicon Valley could be said to be the STEM capital of the world, a hotbed of STEM innovation since the 60s. The area has birthed global giants like Apple, Google, and Adobe, as well as hosting world-class universities like Stanford and UC Berkeley. Mountain View is the exemplary Silicon Valley high school, given the popularity of our AP STEM programs, as well as hosting a successful and popular robotics team. But this focus deludes from other disciplines, mainly our interest and drive in foreign languages. Now, it's not uncommon for students at MVHS to take multiple science or math classes at once, right? Yes. But how many of you can remember when a student showed that same passion for foreign languages by taking a class over the summer, or trying to use it with native speakers, or even just using supplementary materials outside of the textbook? Not that many. Just from class choice, we see students more engaged and enthusiastic with STEM subjects, ultimately valuing STEM over foreign language on a systematic level. And this bears out in data as well. According to the Modern Language Association, language enrollment across the entire country has dropped by 7% since 2009. But while most of us don't realize that we need foreign languages in our education just as much as STEM, our international cultural exchange, instantaneous communication, and globalized economy dictate that we must be able to understand people from across the entire world and understand their very culture and point of view. To do so, foreign languages must be a part of both primary and secondary education, and must be valued just the same as any other core subject. Language is the key that unlocks our world, holding every detail in high definition. And if our generation is to be successful in this world, it is imperative that we grasp that fact. Now, let me ask you all another question. How many of you really understand why something is right or wrong in your native language, any of the rules behind it? Well, for the most part, it's pretty intuitive to distinguish between right and wrong. But when you start studying another language, everything works on a different set of rules that aren't so intuitive. In studying how that language conveys meaning, you gain its perspective for the many ways that meaning can be conveyed. While a phrase translated from one language into another may carry the same general meaning, the specific ways that that meaning is conveyed vary widely from language to language. Even looking at how languages write, how they take the sounds out of our mouths and onto the paper, we see an intense variety between languages. Chinese, for example, uses thousands of symbols, each getting a specific meaning and pronunciation. And Japanese uses that alongside two other sets of symbols that each denote a specific consonant and vowel pairing. Korean's Hangul expresses things using syllable blocks, which each denote a specific syllable. And in Arabic and Hebrew, you only really write in consonants. And in Hindi's Devanagari script, we see that vowels modify consonant bases. Oh my God, there's so much variety. Even looking at how languages use the Latin alphabet express things for writing, we see an intense variety as well. English, for example, is relatively complex and irregular at times, while Spanish is relatively consistent. And even though it's famed for its orthographical complexity, French can often be more straightforward than English at times. The intense variety of ways that languages have come up with to express the same ideas is amazing. And although we may be writing in so many different ways, we are ultimately still expressing the same ideas. But it's impossible to comprehend that without studying another language. And that understanding of diversity is only further when looking at culture. Culture and language are tightly interconnected. The beliefs, values, and practices of a culture are expressed through individuals using the language. And many concepts that we understand in our culture are actually thought of in different ways in different cultures. And we can see this in their language. Now, Chinese, for example, uses the characters shang and xia to indicate last month or week or next month or week, respectively. And these characters mean up and down. Now, when I started learning Chinese, I constantly confused these phrases. But when I started thinking of Chinese time as going top down rather than the left to right spectrum in Western languages, everything fell into place. As we see in Chinese, time doesn't have to be thought of in one way. It can actually be thought of in many ways in many cultures. It's the same way of how different map projections display the features of the Earth's surface differently. How can you see the many ways that we can display the features of the Earth without looking at more than one map? Studying a new language is like looking at a whole new map for communication. It's looking at the same concepts, but in a whole different way. But we must begin to invest in those concepts. Now, why, though, would we learn a foreign language? Why would we spend so much time? Well, the US is founded by people from across the entire world who all come from different native languages and different cultural backgrounds. In 2015 alone, the US granted over 1 million people of foreign birth permanent resident status. In fact, almost 25% of Mountain View High Schoolers are non-English native speakers. You could very well be next to one of them right now. Not only that, but in our world of instantaneous communication, there is so much more interaction between every corner of the globe. My dad regularly speaks to people from Japan, Israel, and China as part of his work, who all speak different native languages and come from different cultural backgrounds. Learning their language is about getting inside their head, or their shoes, as the popular adage goes. It's about connecting with another person, understanding where they're coming from, and being able to bridge your culture with their own. When I spoke to a student who took part in the Iowa exchange 2 years ago, they said, in Japanese, everything is formal and informal. The conjugations, honorifics, and specific ways of addressing people who are older and younger than you all indicate a high amount of respect and degree and interest in structure. This explains differences like when hosting guests, Japanese people will not let the guests do any kind of menial chores during their stay because it is seen as extremely disrespectful for them to let them do that. And looking at a culture through their language, you gain a perspective for the many ways that the many different differences in norms, values, traditions, and history, making what was once weird and bizarre now much more reasonable. So if we're going to promote this cross-cultural connection, we have to start acting like languages actually matter. Languages need to be valued the same as any of the other core subjects, as an integral part of primary and secondary education. To do so, foreign languages must start at the primary level as part of education. Most of Europe does this, integrating foreign languages as part of the curriculum between ages 6 and 9, and requiring students to study a foreign language throughout high school. In fact, some countries require students to study a second foreign language during high school as well. By requiring students to study foreign languages in both primary and high school, these countries are taking languages seriously as part of a student's educational experience. While in the US, languages are treated as electives during high school, in Europe, languages are treated as part of an essential part of a student's educational experience, and an essential part of a student's functioning in the modern world. But this policy change also requires a change in values. When we devalue foreign languages by saying that they're not an important part of our students' education, we devalue foreign cultures and ideas, different ways of life and different perspectives, and promote Anglocentrism. What was a possibility for connection and understanding is rejected by blunt ignorance. Look, I love foreign language. Just like other students enjoy doing calculus or singing or playing sports, I revel in the chance to dissect a grammar textbook to learn the French reflexive pronoun or the Chinese passive voice. And while I understand then that everyone shares this passion, we all must have foundations in foreign language, just like everyone should have foundations in algebra or the basic principles of our Constitution. The education system is meant to produce students who can at least understand the fundamentals of every subject so that they can be competent members of our society and world, even if they don't end up using trigonometry or the basics of 17th century Europe in their day-to-day lives and careers. Language brings a person into a whole new understanding of the diversity in human experience and explains culture in a way that simple study cannot. Even if the specifics of vocab and grammar are lost, the values and skills language imparts warrant several years of study. For as we stand at the edge of division, Language can be the bridge that brings us back together. So let's get to work. Thank you.